There's so much bad news about our planet, it's overwhelming. The truth is, I've given up. This is the story of a simple solution, a way to heal our planet. The solution is right under our feet, and it's as old as dirt.
All of our soils that are under chemical conventional agriculture are almost completely devoid of microorganisms.
Modern agriculture was not designed for the betterment of the soil.
Fossil fuels are by no means the only thing that is causing climate change. When we damage soils, carbon goes back to the atmosphere.
But when we destroy soil, it releases carbon dioxide.
Biosequestration is using plants, trees, and techniques of grazing and farming to capture carbon and store it in the soil.
We can fix a lot of our climate issues if we bring the CO2 down into a living plant and put it back into the soil where it belongs.
Plants working with soil microorganisms, it seems too simple.
Healthy soils lead to a healthy plant, healthy human, healthy climate.
There could be a way to eat food that heals the planet.
The problem isn't the animal. The problem is where the animals are at.
How do we take waste and repurpose and reuse it, because it's really not waste? The poop has to stay in the loop.
Compost is just one of a suite of soil-based carbon capture solutions.
We know how to do it. And if we continue to scale over 30 years, we can reverse global warming.
We can get the Earth back to the Garden of Eden that it once was by regeneration.
To see biodiversity return to a place that was completely devastated.
That gives me hope.
Our health and the health of our planet are connected.
If you look over here, my neighbor's land that has been chemical fallow, then you look over at our paddocks, you have a diversity of different plant species. Which model do you want your food to be produced from? The answer is pretty simple to me.
I'll make you a deal. I won't give up, and neither should you.
Super excited about our next speaker today. He's coming to us via Zoom. Finian Makepeace. He is the co-founder of Kiss the Ground. He is a renowned presenter, media creator, and thought leader in the field of regenerative agriculture and soil health.
And so one of the things with Finian, like we go back to my story about the Soil Health Academy that was at McIntyre Farms. Ironically, the Kiss the Ground documentary came out that same time as I was going through the Soil Health Academy with Ray and Gabe and his whole team. So that was not only was I having an aha moment with them, it like really took it to the next level of like thinking about the water cycles, the small water cycles, and how everything is so interconnected. And so Finian and his team, they're in Southern California, and I think they've reached over like 20 or 30 million people with their documentary. They have another one coming up. So it's super exciting just to be a part of not only their movement, but just the sustainable ag, the collective action, the social impacts. It's an exciting time, and especially coming out of this pandemic where obviously social anxiety is still pretty high. People are like, well, what's this new normal that people are talking about? I mean, I'm super excited for what he's bringing.
I'm so excited to hear a little bit more about that from Finian right now. Shall we bring him on? Are we ready?
Looks like we got Finian.
All right, take it away.
Really great to be here with you. It's a super pleasure to follow Ray in this presentation. Ray is one of my heroes and has been an advisor since the very, very beginning of Kiss the Ground to help us on our way. It is really a together we can do this energy that is all encompassing in this movement of all of us in the regenerative world. Our mission at Kiss the Ground is awakening people to the possibilities of regeneration, and we're going to jump right into that. But today I'm here as a soil advocate to inspire you to take this on and say, I'm an example, I guess, of this, or Kiss the Ground is, where we said, we're not the farmers, we're not the scientists, we're not the farmer trainers, but wow, we can probably help elevate this movement. We can probably be champions of this movement and give it more momentum. And really, I'll give this slide here. This is an example of it. So this is responsibility. These doctors have an ability to respond to something that a lot of us don't have an ability to respond. So if I chop my leg off, they might be able to patch me up, unlike other people. They have an ability to respond, right? Each of us, taking myself first, I am able to respond to what I've learned in regeneration and soil health, which we're going to tap into, what you just heard from Ray. I have an ability to spread awareness. Every single one of you has an ability to spread awareness. To what degree you're going to do that, to which audience you're going to do that, that is all decided by you ultimately, but the sky is the limit. As I just talked about, one of our advocates getting Congresswoman Jayapal to watch the film has led to this domino effect. So this is where we can each declare ourselves as response able to say, okay, I can do that. I can actually help spread the word, and it will be just as important of a role as anyone else in this movement is playing. So I want to go over quickly just kind of what is the problem. We're here at the Carbon Summit. I do like that it's called the Carbon Summit. I do agree with what was stated that we are in a moment in history when we don't want to exclude and tell people they're totally wrong. As advocates, we want to meet people where they're at. A lot of people's head is in the carbon world. We want to make sure as advocates that we're setting the stage for kind of the yes and conversation. And that's really where you're bringing people in saying, I hear you. I totally grasp where you're at with this carbon thinking. And how do I expand that into regenerative think? And how do I expand that into looking towards regeneration as the ultimate goal? So yes, this slide's older. So we're at 420 now, but 420 parts per million of CO2, we're still skyrocketing. That's a huge problem that is causing a greenhouse effect. That's all true. That's a reality. That's something we have to limit our emissions, of course. But there's something else going on that arguably is way more alarming. We have a global emergency called desertification. 1/3 of farmable land has been lost to soil degradation in the past 40 years, meaning it's no longer able to be productive in agriculture. To give you some context of that, an area the size of England, 30 million acres, England's 32 million acres, 30 million acres goes out of production every single year around the world because the land is so degraded that it can no longer even be propped up with chemicals. So we've degraded the land so much, beat it up so much, that it is essentially cast aside as unusable farmland and now is sitting desertified. That's what we're dealing with. So when we talk about, yes, there's too much carbon in the atmosphere, but we have to address that we are breaking land at this alarming rate. Right now, we're dealing with the amount of land on Earth that is deemed degraded is 75%. There's not really an option when you deal with that. What else should we do? We have to regenerate it, obviously. And this is another context. So as an advocate, all of what Ray said, use it, share it, dial it in, get your talking points in order. This is one that's particularly passionate for me, is talking about something that's broken. When something is broken, it doesn't work as it was designed to work. So when we start to relate to we broke and are breaking and are causing the breaking of soil and its amazing technological, or whatever you want to call it, its ability to function, we break it and it's not working. That's a context in people's heads to understand. The other cool thing with something that's broken is you can potentially fix it. To put a number on that, in the United States, broken soil leads to 4 tons of topsoil per acre per year running off our land, either with wind or water erosion. 4 tons is essentially, you can write this one down, 4 pickup trucks, regular sized pickup trucks filled with soil. Imagine those pulling into an acre lot. the size of a normal backyard in suburban America, and scraping off 4 pickup trucks full of topsoil every year. That's our current rate of soil loss in the United States. It's actually, Ray gets mad at me because this is the low that no one will mess with, but in many cases it's 10 tons, it's 12 tons, it's way more. So this is a very, very, very low average that's quoted, just so that as an advocate, no one messes with you to say your numbers are too high, just as a side note. So essentially, I want to jump into this push against for a moment here. I'm not against sustainability. I don't have a problem with it, but I'm going to talk about that in a second. But essentially, we are aiming right now to sustain broken. So we've broken the soil. 75% of the world's soil is deemed degraded. We've broken it. It doesn't work anymore. And now we're trying to sustain broken. To put that into perspective, that means any technological advance, whether it's watering, whether it's drones, whatever it is essentially trying to put a Band-Aid, as Ray was talking about, put a Band-Aid on a broken system. You're basically saying, okay, how do I get the best out of this brokenness from the technology that I'm inventing? But you're still dealing with broken. And I like to use the analogy of the cup. On the left, you're seeing a cup here that's broken. And so thinking about humans' thought right now, we're trying to say, how do we get the function from that cup of getting water or liquid and having it be held while it's broken? But the funny thing and the ironic thing is we didn't even know, first of all, that it was a cup. Second of all, we didn't really know how it really functions. Third of all, we're spending trillions of dollars to try to get the best out of that cup. When in reality, this is important, we can literally rebuild the cup, glue it back together with the carbon that's causing a problem in our atmosphere. That's the moment for you. We can have it function again because we can literally glue it back together so it works again. And this is the analogy of the cup. Roger Savory has a great quote. I'll read here. Over 20 major civilizations have failed due to the collapse of agriculture. How arrogant would we be to presume that the root cause of our collapse won't be the exact same thing? And I just want you to sit with this for a second to really grasp at a global scale, we are reaching the end of the ability to prop up our broken ag system with chemicals, as we see with farmers' collapse of economics and everything else like that. Here's another way to look at it. This is a really important slide because it's indicating the insanity of trying to sustain where we're at right now. This on the left, we have landscape function / carrying capacity. That means how well the land can function, water, wind, everything, and how much it can carry. Basically, how much life can it support? So when we deal with 10,000 years plus of degenerative agriculture across the world, desertification across the world, we have to say, oh my God, here's where we're at. We're at 75% of land degraded. When we say sustaining now, if humanity's goal is sustainability, it really must be a cause for alarm of all of us saying, no, we can't sustain now. We have to regenerate. We have to help regenerate the land. Then we can talk sustainability. And the way I put it is sustainability is just way ahead of its time. It's nothing wrong with sustainability. It's just those people who have that in their job title, that is great, whether that's you or not, awesome. You're just way ahead of your time, but we have to regenerate first. That's the first and foremost. This is the man who needs no introduction. I think this is really important because oftentimes people have egos attached to their level of environmentalism, but when we share something like this from Ray Archuleta, who just shared with you, I didn't really know how the soil worked. What you're doing is helping to create a container for the people you're talking with that makes them feel safe about their ignorance or lack of education around this subject. So when we tell people like, yeah, Al Gore didn't know about the soil as the solution. You know, someone mentioned earlier, Jason mentioned earlier, Leonardo DiCaprio, he didn't know. Like, these are famous environmentalists who knew. If you Google the top famous environmentalists, the only person who really knew about this over 15, 12 years ago was Vandana Shiva. And the rest of these famous environmentalists weren't talking about or didn't know about anything related to this soil solution at all. So this gives a relationship to people you're advocating for that makes them feel more like they're a part of the conversation. They don't get defensive. Governor Gavin Newsom, who we were talking to, we introduced this to an audience and said, hey, everyone, don't feel stupid that you didn't know that. And he said, thank you for saying that, because as a competitive environmentalist, I would have felt on guard if you had told me this is something that you should have known. Again, this is setting the stage so that you as advocates can approach people and not push them away by making them feel stupid. As Ray talked about, but I like to push even further, soil is built from thin air. Why is it important? Why am I saying soil is built from thin air? Because in most textbooks and universities to this day, most of how we talk about soil being built is just the organic material that is decomposing at the surface and blending in to the top layer of soil. But remember, most of that is actually turning into CO2 rather quickly in the case of a short year. But when we talk about building soil, the new concept that was really left out of most of the science was how much of the liquid carbon that Ray talked about is being pumped and exuded out of the roots. That phenomenon was left out of almost all of our understanding of how soil was built. And so as advocates talking about carbon, this is at the Carbon Summit, we really need to emphasize the liquid carbon pathway. Plants are pumping 30 to 40% of their sugars into the soil to feed microorganisms who in exchange are making minerals and water more available. Liquid carbon sugar for minerals and water. This is it in a nutshell here. Nature is designed for net carbon gain. When you have soil that's not covered, the organisms are consuming carbon that's left in the soil, and you have a one-way pathway of carbon going out. When you have plants covering the soil, you're pumping carbon in, and yes, the more carbon you pump in, the more biology you have in the soil. So therefore, the more life is eating carbon and decomposing things. So yeah, you actually do have more carbon going up, but plants evolved to make that work better for the whole system. So when the carbon's going up, a lot of that carbon will get captured and brought back in by the plant and pushed back down into the soil, therefore creating a net carbon gain. Cool? This is what's so exciting about what Ray's talking about is actually we have to cover the soil. If we don't, we get a net carbon loss, period. This is for the Carbon Summit people who think in carbon terms. Here it is for you, 30 to 40% of carbon sugar shared to the soil. Creating glued aggregate super sponges. Aggregates, when they're healthy, are holding 20 times their weight in water. This is nature's technology that has evolved. Those glues are formed by many things, but as Ray talked about, mycorrhizal fungi creating glomalin on its outside, that sticky protein that is made of carbon that glues and binds the soil together. Bacteria create glues and make microaggregates. The soil creates glues that are made of carbon that glue the soil together so it functions properly. Here it is, rebuilding soil. And as you'll notice, I'm putting in phrases here that I encourage you as an advocate that are tested, tried and true for me as an advocate out there in the field that really get people to resonate with this and grasp it. Okay, wow, we can take dirt and turn it into functioning soil. I didn't spray glue that. That is literally just glued by microbe glues in the soil. So as Ray talked about, maximize photosynthesis. We have to do this. Otherwise, desertification is the only trajectory we have. We can grow back functioning soil. We can do this. It's so ridiculous that we can do it so quickly. And I just want to share this for a moment. I've been an advocate for this now for coming on 9 years. And the more that I go to farms and actually see the difference of a regenerative farm versus a degenerative conventional farm, every time I'm blown away, and I encourage everyone to do this, because seeing is really believing, especially if you're taking on being an advocate. When you see pictures of it, it still feels like a fairy tale. But when you go there and you see this, and then you walk across the street and you see nearly desert, you grasp at a much more profound level that this really can happen, and this really can happen quickly. And it's just the most inspiring thing. So this is my side note of make sure you visit regenerative farms and compare them to close by neighbors who are degenerative conventional. See it for yourself. It will shock you, and it will live with you forever. So the problem is the solution. Too much carbon in the atmosphere, those carbon building blocks, they are literally what we need to glue the soil back together. Cool? So carbon and CO2 pumps through a plant. The plant uses photosynthesis to take water and the carbon from carbon dioxide and make liquid sugar, carbon, from glucose and mixing with the water, and it then can make tons of carbohydrates that it wants to, pumps those into the ground and builds
Recording
soil.
in progress.
So there you go. We need to build back soils so that land can function again. The glue to build back the soil comes from CO2. All right, so now I want to share with you all a demonstration. This is critical for you. Please do this as an advocate. I think I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you can see my full view here, if that's okay. Hey, everybody. So as advocates, you might not be able to go visit a farm. You might not be able to have all of that always work for you. But anyone, anywhere, anytime can go in and become a soil advocate in your kitchen, okay? And this is called Dee Pershouse's bread and flour demo. And as you see here, I have bread and flour, a small cup of flour and 2 pieces of bread. The flour is our degraded, tilled soil, and the bread is acting as our healthy soil. So watch closely here. I think everything's good for seeing this. I have a cup of water in this hand. I have another cup that has teeny holes punctured by a pen. And now I'm going to show you the bread and flour demo. As you're talking to your audience, you're basically saying, when we till the soil, we break up the aggregates and make it turn to a vulnerable to wind and water erosion. You could also have a fan that you put here, and that would blow, and then they could see what wind erosion looks like just by blowing the flour with the fan. But here we're talking about rain. So when it rains on tilled, degraded, bare soil, we get a phenomenon like this. Watch. As you watch closely, the rain's coming, and it's just running off the plate. Okay? And if you notice, if you look closely, you have all of this water is murky here. And if you use a colored plate, it works a little better. But this is all murky water because some of that topsoil ran off and now is in there. If we have chemicals on there, that is chemicals going into our waterways, into our streams, rivers, and lakes, and ocean. But this is sediment coming off here, all right? So now you have this layer of wet soil here, and that, if the sun was baking on it, would evaporate very, very quickly. But I just want you to notice something really, really critical here. Take your finger, I'll do it at the end. So I'm gonna go over now to our healthy soil. And imagine this could be covered in plants too, to be even more realistic. But you take your healthy soil and you pour your water on it, it's raining. What do you notice is that it's infiltrating all of it. Now, as Ray talked about, most of the average infiltration that the Soil Health Academy and Understanding Ag see in the United States is a ½ an inch of water infiltrating in an hour. Most regenerative ranches in 3 to 4 years are infiltrating a ½ an inch under 30 seconds. I was at Dr. Alan Williams. He infiltrated a ½ an inch of water in under 4 seconds. Now, here's what's so amazing about this. Look at this bread, and it's now soaked in water, okay, like a sponge. Now, the plants would be living that they could put shade and provide shade for this, and that would stay moist for a very long time, protected by plants. And so now plants have access to, you can stick your finger in there and be like, wow, they have access to water for a really long time. Something else really crucial. I don't know if you can see this, but the water that has come out the bottom of the bread is clear. ladies and gentlemen, this is where springs come from. When we have dried up springs all over the US and the whole world, when we have water infiltrating into the soil and going down until it hits the solid surface like clay or rock, it goes out lower down the hill as a spring. This is how it works. This is how nature invented fresh water, clean water. All the carbon in here, plus the minerals and microbes, are filtering that water, making clean water come out. Now, back to our degraded tilled soil. Here's what's super trippy. You take your finger and do a slight swoop over here. All of that is still totally bone dry, degraded soil. So if a plant was in here and you watered it, quote unquote, or a big rain happened, you have a plant that is still not able to access that. So that's called ineffective rainfall. Completely ineffective to stopping a drought. So now we have super droughts, super floods, super droughts, super floods, because our soil doesn't work. This will remain, if it's covered with plants especially, will remain moist and able to provide the plant water for a very, very long time. All right, so that is a demonstration that every single one of you can and should do. We need you out there doing it. It works when you present this to representatives. It works when you present this to anyone out there who's willing to listen, whether it's in your kitchen or whether you take it to your city council. This can change people's perspective. And then, of course, take them to a farm if you can. So Ray might have talked about this a bit, but this is the 6 principles of regenerative agriculture. And as Ray and his team have noted, context has become king and added to the original soil health principles that they came up with years ago. But context being in there, but least disturbance, context, increased biodiversity, living root, soil armor, animal integration. We don't have time today to talk about why each of those is so crucial, but I encourage you to take soil advocate training or to go to one of Ray and Gabe's courses to learn that. I'm actually going to drink some of this water that I use because I'm running out of steam. So now we're going to talk about denormalizing conventional agriculture or degenerative agriculture. As advocates, when you're out there, you watch Kiss the Ground, the movie, you share it with your friends, but you can do many things all the time. When you're seeing agriculture now through fresh eyes, you can be the source for other people seeing agriculture differently. A lot of us drive down the highway and see bare ground that's tilled and literally have a subconscious thought of, that's just farming. And we go on with our lives. But your job as an advocate can be not only to inspire regenerative agriculture, but start to denormalize and contextualize what happened with degenerative agriculture. Again, whether it's organic or whether it's not organic, it's either degenerative or causing degeneration or regenerative, causing regeneration. So here's an example, bare soil. What's happening with carbon? Going up. What's happening with water? Quickly leaving, evaporating, running off. Covered soil, we're providing a means for carbon to be pumped into the ground. We're providing a means for water to infiltrate, be absorbed, retained in our system. That's a net gain of carbon and water, right? But then we go through here and we say, wait a minute, let's check out our principles, excluding context in this, but the bare soil here, if you look onto your bottom left, minimal disturbance, no. Living root, no. Armored soil, no. Diversity, no. Animal integration, no. Now we go over to our right side, minimal disturbance, yes. Living root, yes. Armored soil, yes. Diversity, yes. Animal integration, maybe, we don't know, hopefully. But this is a way for you as an advocate to start to grasp the ginormity of the problem that we're causing for the entire world through our agriculture now, and the flip side of the option of everything changing. So these are tools that we make at Kiss the Ground for you all to use, and through our advocacy training programs, give you the ability to articulate these much more confidently. Now I'm just going to go over some other ones, but obviously tilling, degrading all of the aggregates as we talked about, leaving it vulnerable to water and wind erosion. But again, same thing applies. You can start to look through here and grasp the difference that we're seeing. CAFO's scenario versus the planned grazing, rotational grazing. So these are assets that really work when you're talking to people who are in business and in government, in university systems, whoever it might be. Again, here we get to see what's going on in these pictures. Chemicals, these are huge. We often forget that the biggest greenhouse gas from agriculture is nitrous oxide because of over-application of nitrogen fertilizer, and that's a huge problem. We can solve that with having more farmers take Soil Health Academy or Understanding Ag's trainings to learn how they can use the Haney test, for example, to significantly reduce their inputs based on the biology that is readily available to help make those nutrients more available. So Ray's explanation I love of regenerative agriculture, but sometimes it's hard to remember or have the context conversation of all that regenerative agriculture is. So just to be totally truthful, this is not a fair or the explanation of regenerative agriculture by any means, because as Ray articulated so eloquently, it is this phenomenon, it is this journey, it is this trajectory. But what is often overlooked when new people are hearing about regenerative is that it is an outcome. It is a perpetual outcome. It is a perpetual understanding. But to start with, there's this really important part. Is it helping regeneration occur? For someone to remember what regeneration means, it's for something to be going towards its higher functioning state. So a lizard that gets its tail chopped off, it grows another tail so it can be a functioning lizard again. If we want land to function again, regeneration is required. So agriculture that is regenerative is agriculture that's causing regeneration. Take the word agriculture, take the word regeneration, put them together, you start to get that it is a system of agriculture that is causing regeneration. All the minutiae, all the details that are articulated by Ray and others are critically important. I feel it's important, though, also as advocates there, that there's a starting point to this conversation that doesn't get overlooked. Another Albert Einstein quote, Ray did one earlier, we can't solve problems by using the same kind of thinking we used when we created them. So here's another useful tool for advocates. I remember sharing this with the Nature Conservancy before they started their soil program, and this was a really big aha for them. They were investing billions of dollars into sustainability, and what they grasped when I did a napkin sketch of these icons was essentially the quandary of sustainability and versus the opportunity of regeneration. And as you see in the regeneration curve, we're starting in a diminished state and ever increasing. This is what nature is designed to do. This is the law of nature, what it works to do. Life begets life begets life. And sustainability is not talking about regeneration as much as it sometimes is. And it's kind of the mother in some ways of regenerative, but regenerative is itself. Like, we have to identify that this is a phenomenon that is happening. Here's, again, I'm not trying to be really brutal against sustainability. I'm just trying to get people to grasp what happens if we sustain where we're at. This is gruesome. I didn't think I was going to show this slide today, but it stayed in somehow. This is road rash. This is sustaining road rash. What if your body wasn't healing? This is sustaining a tilled field. I'm asking you to look at this because when we grasp the severity of what we're doing and this insanity of it, and not letting the natural process of healing to occur, not letting nature cover itself, we start to realize what we're doing in a bigger way. So when we talk about sustainability, we should be talking about regenerative ability, because that's what we have. That's the opportunity it lays in front of us. Carbon sequestration is not the end. It's the means to regenerate Earth. I want to go back here. Carbon sequestration is epic and great, but I need everyone to try on that it is just the means to something so much more fantastic and big for our future generations in the world than just carbon sequestration itself. Because a lot of the conversations, as they stemmed from the carbon context of how do we deal with too much carbon in the atmosphere, sequestration is a great option. But when we stop there, we're really harming humanity's potential to be stewards of the Earth in this regenerative phenomenon. Regenerating Earth can happen when we use carbon as the means. Sorry, I still have flour on my finger in case you were noticing that. It's when I wiped the flour away. Sorry about that. So, regenerate Earth, means reversing global warming, reducing flooding and drought, reduce fire hazards, reduce toxic pesticides and fertilizer use, reduce dead zones and water pollution, revive farmer prosperity, replenish fresh water sources, recreate regional access to nutrient-dense food, and recover biodiversity and reconnect indigenous knowledge. 5 things to know for you when you're advocating for soil health. How soil is actually built, meaning how do we restructure it? How do we use carbon from the atmosphere to do it? And the biology in the soil being 100% how it happens. How does carbon sequestration work? How are watersheds and water cycles working? The small water cycle. How do we manage for watershed function? How do we mitigate risk? How are we putting risk mitigation as just as crucial as carbon sequestration or these other areas of limiting our damage? How are we talking about food health? We didn't get into that today, but it's one of the most exciting, phenomenal conversations ever. The biology in the soil make the food have its nutrients. Over 50% of all minerals, trace minerals, and everything that you get from food are because certain biology are unlocking those nutrients and making them available for the plant to uptake. So without the biology in the soil, you can't get 50% or more of your nutrients, period. So you have to have living soil. Otherwise, your food is a shadow of what it should be. Economics, we didn't get into that much today, but in essence, you degenerate your landscape, you reduce your ecosystem carrying capacity, you have to increase your inputs. But if you increase your ecosystem carrying capacity, you decrease your input cost. So you literally have more for less with regeneration, and you have less for more in degeneration. Basic economics. Extinction. How and why, without regenerative agriculture, we're headed for extinction around the planet. I encourage everyone to take soil advocate training. It's not just because I teach this course, but it's because my job as an advocate from Kiss the Ground, we're working on policy, we're working on getting farmers trained through the Soil Health Academy and other programs. We're making sure advocates like you don't have to spend 7 years developing yourselves as an advocate as I have, but you can jump ahead. You can become an advocate in an 8-week course and start to learn how you're going to target your own audiences, how you're going to do this. So that's what we're encouraging you to do, is to check in to how you can become a part of this movement quickly. Farmers are hurting, and they need all of us to support them in this. And we can do it in a way that doesn't diminish farming, doesn't diminish farmers. We can work with them on behalf of them. Together, we can do this. Please check out kisstheground.com. We can work together to regenerate our earth. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.